First contact in crisis. High Consul Ven stood before the crystalline windows of the Zephyrian High Council chamber, his iridescent scales dulled with worry as he watched another defense satellite fall dark. The Nexus swarm had breached their outer defense grid with frightening efficiency, their biomechanical ships consuming everything in their path to fuel their endless reproduction. "The Meridian colony has gone silent," announced Subconsul Lyra, her voice trembling. "That's the third settlement this cycle." The Zephyrians had spent millennia building their civilization on principles of harmony and intellectual pursuit. Their achievements in art, science, and architecture were unmatched in known space. But now, faced with an enemy that knew only consumption and expansion, their peaceful nature had become their greatest weakness. "Show me the projection models again," Ven requested, though he had memorized the grim statistics. The holographic display materialized, showing the swarm's exponential growth pattern. At current rates, they would reach the Zephyrian homeworld of Crystallis within 15 stellar cycles. "We've exhausted all diplomatic attempts," stated Archival Master Thex, his ancient voice carrying the weight of centuries. "The swarm doesn't respond to any form of communication. They simply consume." Ven's inner membrane flickered with forbidden thoughts. In the deepest vaults of their archives lay information about a species they had deliberately avoided for generations. A species that evolved on a world so harsh, it would kill a Zephyrian within minutes. A species that had mastered the art of warfare even before reaching for the stars. "Access Archive Vault Omega 7, Ven commanded, causing several council members to ripple their scales in shock. "High Consul," Lyra protested, "you cannot be suggesting." "Show me Earth," Ven interrupted, his tone leaving no room for debate. The holographic display shifted, revealing a turbulent world of vast oceans and violent weather patterns. Data streams showed atmospheric pressure that would crush Zephyrian bones, gravity that would flatten their bodies, and temperature swings that seemed impossible to survive. Yet this death world had produced one of the most resilient species known to exist, humans. Our ancestors classified them as Deathworlders for good reason, Thex reminded everyone. Their entire history is written in conflict. They reached space while still fighting among themselves. "Exactly," Ven replied, his scales brightening with purpose. "They understand warfare in ways we never could. And despite their violent origins, their historical records show a consistent pattern of defending the vulnerable." The council chamber erupted in nervous chatter, but Ven raised his primary appendage for silence. "We've monitored their development for centuries. Yes, they're predators. Yes, they're dangerous. But they're predators with a moral code. They value protection of the weak. They celebrate sacrifice for the greater good. And most importantly, they've unified their world without losing their capacity to fight. The swarm will reach their territory eventually," Lyra realized, her scales shifting to a thoughtful hue. "Better to approach them as potential allies now than face extinction alone," Ven agreed. He moved to the quantum communications array and began composing humanity's first official contact with the Zephyrian civilization, a desperate plea for help. As the message was encoded and launched toward Earth, Ven watched the star patterns through the crystal windows. "We spent generations fearing humanity's warrior nature," he mused. "Now it may be our only hope for survival." The quantum burst carrying their distress call traveled across the void, bearing with it the fate of an entire civilization. The Zephyrians, masters of art and science, were about to discover whether the Deathworlders of Earth would answer their call for help. In the distance, the Nexus swarm continued its relentless advance, unaware that it had just forced the birth of an alliance that would change the galaxy forever. Part 2, Operation Stormbreaker. Admiral Hannah Bishop stood at parade rest on the bridge of the UES Hyperion, her weathered features illuminated by the tactical holodisplay. The message from the Zephyrians played before the assembled fleet command staff for the third time, its implications growing heavier with each viewing. "Confirmed coordinates received from Deep Space Tracking," reported Captain Jean Park, her tactical officer. The biomechanical signatures matched the Zephyrian data. The swarm is exactly where they said it would be. Bishop had spent 30 years in the United Earth Defense Fleet, but nothing in her experience had prepared her for this moment. Humanity had always known they weren't alone, but first contact coming in the form of a desperate plea for help wasn't what anyone had expected. "Play the destruction footage again," she ordered, studying the way the swarm ships moved. They weren't just mindless destroyers, there was a pattern to their attacks, a horrible efficiency in how they broke down captured resources to spawn more of their kind. The command deck of the Hyperion fell silent as they watched entire worlds fall. Crystal cities that had stood for millennia were reduced to raw materials in hours. The Zephyrians' advanced shield technology, impressive by any standard, might as well have been tissue paper against the swarm's adaptive weapons. "Director Wright is online from Fleet Command," announced Communications Officer Reese. The main screen shifted to show the stern face of humanity's top military commander. "Admiral Bishop, the Security Council has reached a decision. Operation Stormbreaker is approved. You have full tactical authority." Bishop straightened. "Rules of engagement, sir. The swarm has been classified as an extinction-level threat. You have unrestricted weapons clearance, including the Prometheus protocols." A murmur ran through the bridge crew. The Prometheus protocols had never been authorized for actual combat. They represented the pinnacle of human military technology, weapons designed to fight wars in the depths of space where conventional physics broke down. "Understood, sir. How many ships can I pull?" "The entire Third Fleet is yours. First and Second will maintain Sol system defense. That gives you 250 ships, including the new Titan-class dreadnoughts." Bishop pulled up the force deployment hologram, her mind already calculating battle formations. The Hyperion would serve as her flagship, supported by 5 Titan-class dreadnoughts. The rest of the fleet was a mix of cruisers, destroyers, and the newly commissioned Wraith-class stealth ships. "Time to target?" Wright asked. "At maximum burn through fold space, we can reach the Zephyrian capital world in 4 days. The swarm's projected arrival is in 7. Cut it close, Hannah." "That's the plan, sir. We need them to commit their forces before we spring our trap." After the briefing, Bishop called her senior staff to the tactical room. The accumulated combat experience in that room represented over 2 centuries of space warfare training. "The Zephyrians are peaceful," she began, "but they're not stupid. Their technical capabilities are beyond impressive. If we can combine their scientific knowledge with our combat experience, we might have a chance against this swarm." Commander Dmitry Volkov, her chief weapons officer, studied the swarm ship schematics. "Their biological components should make them vulnerable to our thermal lance technology. One good hit could trigger a chain reaction through their neural networks." "Assuming we can hit them," Captain Park interjected. "Look at these maneuvering patterns. They move like insects, not ships." "That's exactly what we trained for," Bishop reminded them. "The Jupiter defense exercises? Those were designed to prepare us for enemies that don't think like we do." The next 48 hours were a blur of activity. Ships were loaded with supplies, crews ran combat drills, and weapon systems were calibrated and recalibrated. The Prometheus devices, sealed in their quantum-locked containers, were transferred to the fleet under heavy guard. Standing on the Hyperion's observation deck, Bishop watched her fleet assemble in high Earth orbit. 250 ships, representing the finest technology and bravest crews humanity had to offer. They would be the first humans to engage in combat alongside an alien species, defending a civilization that had once feared to even contact them. "Message from the Zephyrian High Council," reported Officer Reese. "They're asking if we received their call for help." Bishop smiled grimly. "Send them this: the children of Earth are coming. Hold the line." As the fleet prepared for its first fold space jump, Bishop reflected on the irony of the situation. Humanity had spent centuries working to become more peaceful, more diplomatic. Now their warrior nature, the very thing that had caused the Zephyrians to avoid them, might be the only thing standing between a peaceful species and extinction. All ships, battle stations, she ordered. Prepare for fold space transition on my mark. The time had come to show the galaxy what humanity could do when called upon to protect the innocent. As the fold space drive spooled up, Bishop made a silent promise to the distant Zephyrians. The Deathworlders were coming, and the swarm was about to learn why Earth had earned its fearsome reputation. The battle for Crystallis. The human fleet emerged from fold space into chaos. The crystalline orbital habitats of Crystallis glittered like fractured diamonds in the light of their binary suns, but among them moved the dark shapes of swarm vessels, their biomechanical forms casting strange shadows on the shimmering structures below. Multiple swarm signatures detected, Captain Park announced, her fingers dancing across the tactical display. They've already breached the outer defense grid. Admiral Bishop took in the battlefield with practiced eyes. The Zephyrian defense ships, elegant constructions of crystal and light, were fighting a desperate holding action. Their energy weapons were powerful but predictable, and the swarm was already adapting. Fleet status? Bishop demanded. All ships present and accounted for. Titan-class dreadnoughts are in formation. Wraith squadrons awaiting deployment orders. Bishop activated the fleet-wide command channel. This is Admiral Bishop. The swarm has not yet detected our arrival. We have one chance to hit them hard before they adapt to our presence. Remember your training. These beings don't think like us, they don't think at all. They're a biological machine, and like any machine, they can be broken. She turned to Commander Volkov. Deploy the Prometheus devices according to strategy pattern Delta. Let's show them what happens when you corner a predator species. The first Prometheus device detonated in the heart of a swarm cluster. Space itself seemed to twist, the laws of physics briefly surrendering to human ingenuity. A dozen swarm ships imploded, their biological components unable to cope with the localized distortion of reality. The swarm reacted instantly, their remaining ships breaking formation and scattering like startled fish. But Bishop had anticipated this. The Wraith-class ships, running silent with their quantum stealth fields engaged, were already in position. Wraith Squadron, execute attack pattern Sigma, Bishop ordered. Titans, move to support the Zephyrian defensive line. All other ships, engage at will. Show them why Earth is classified as a death world. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for generations to come. Human ships moved with controlled aggression, their tactics unpredictable and fierce. Where the Zephyrians fought with elegant precision, the humans brought controlled chaos to the battlefield. High Consul Ven, watching from the Crystallis command center, saw his people's salvation in the way the human ships fought. They didn't just attack, they hunted. Each strike was calculated to cause maximum damage while protecting their allies. It was the difference between artists and warriors, and for the first time, Ven understood why his ancestors had both feared and respected the Deathworlders. Admiral, Captain Park called out, the swarm is adapting to the Prometheus devices. Effectiveness dropping by 30%. Bishop nodded grimly. She'd expected this. Deploy the secondary countermeasures. Time to show them why challenging humanity was a mistake. The secondary countermeasures were something uniquely human, a virus designed to infect the swarm's biological components. It was based on the principles of Earth's own immune system, evolved over millions of years on a planet that tried to kill its inhabitants daily. Zephyrian ships are coordinating with our attack pattern, reported Communications Officer Reese. They're learning our tactics in real time. Indeed, the elegant crystal ships were beginning to move more aggressively, their energy weapons synchronized with human attack runs. The swarm, faced with this unprecedented combination of human ferocity and Zephyrian precision, began to show signs of confusion. They've never faced an enemy that could adapt faster than they could, Bishop realized. Push the advantage. All ships, execute Battle Plan Omega. The human fleet split into 3 attack groups, each led by a Titan-class dreadnought. They drove into the heart of the swarm formation like spears, their weapons blazing. The Wraith squadrons struck from stealth, their quantum-tipped torpedoes targeting the largest swarm vessels. But the swarm wasn't finished. As their ships began to fall, they released something new, microscopic spores that began eating through ship hulls like acid. Defensive nanites responding, reported engineering. Hull integrity holding at 80%. Bishop allowed herself a grim smile. They had planned for this too. Earth's experience with hostile microorganisms had led to the development of defensive systems that the swarm couldn't have anticipated. The battle raged for hours, a dance of destruction against the backdrop of Crystallis's crystal cities. Gradually, inevitably, the combined might of human warfare and Zephyrian technology began to turn the tide. Swarm vessels are retreating, announced Captain Park. They're falling back to their secondary positions. Not retreating, Bishop corrected. Regrouping. This was just the first wave. Signal the Zephyrian command, we need to prepare for what comes next. As damage reports came in and repairs began, Bishop looked out at the battlefield. The space around Crystallis was littered with the broken remnants of swarm ships, their biomechanical corpses drifting like dead sea creatures in an ocean of stars. The battle for Crystallis was won, but the war was far from over. The swarm would return, stronger and more adapted than before. But now they would face something they had never encountered in their endless expansion, a united front of human determination and Zephyrian intelligence. And Bishop intended to show them exactly why that was a fight they could not win. Counter-strike. Commander Marcus Sterling peered through the quantum scope at the massive swarm hive cluster floating in the darkness of deep space. The biomechanical structure pulsed with an unhealthy light, its surface writhing with constant activity as new ships were spawned from its depths. Primary target acquired, he whispered into his neural comm, strike Team Phantom in position. Aboard his stealth insertion vessel, 5 other humans sat in perfect stillness, each wearing the latest in adaptive combat suits. They were part of the newly formed Human Zephyrian Special Operations Division, chosen for their ability to think creatively under impossible pressure. Confirmed, Phantom Lead, came Admiral Bishop's voice through the secure channel. You have authorization to proceed. Remember, we only get one shot at this. Sterling looked at his team, Lieutenant Sophia Patel, their tech specialist, Sergeant James Rodriguez, demolitions expert, Dr. Nadia Volkov, xenobiologist, and twins Owen and Olivia Chen, their infiltration specialists. Each represented the peak of human military excellence, trained for a mission that would have been considered impossible just months ago. Target's bioreadings analyzed, Dr. Volkov reported, her eyes scanning through data streams. The Zephyrian intel was correct. There's a central neural cluster controlling the entire hive network. If we can reach it, we can shut down their entire operation in this sector, Sterling finished. Prep for insertion. Chaos Protocol is now active. The insertion was a masterpiece of human ingenuity combined with Zephyrian technology. Their ship, cloaked in quantum fields that bent both light and probability, drifted through the swarm's outer defenses like a ghost. The biomechanical sensors, designed to detect energy signatures and physical matter, simply couldn't process something that existed in a state of quantum uncertainty. Multiple spawn chambers detected, Sophia reported as they approached their entry point. The hive is producing new ships every 6 minutes. Rate is increasing. Sterling nodded grimly. This was why their mission couldn't wait. Every hour they delayed meant dozens more swarm ships joining the war. The recent victory at Crystallis had bought them time, but the swarm's ability to replenish its forces had to be stopped. Beginning molecular phase shift, Owen announced as their ship aligned with the hive's outer membrane. We'll have exactly 30 seconds to pass through before the barrier re-establishes itself. The sensation of passing through the hive's outer wall was like moving through thick syrup. Their quantum-shifted state allowed them to slip between the molecular bonds of the barrier, but it felt wrong in a way that set off every primitive warning system in their human brains. Once inside, they moved through corridors that seemed to breathe, their surfaces pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. The air was thick with spores and chemical signals, deadly to most species, but their sealed suits, designed to withstand the harshest environments of space, held firm. "Contact," Olivia whispered suddenly. "Maintenance drones at 2 o'clock." The team froze as several crab-like machines skittered past their position, their sensors sweeping the corridor. The quantum field cloaking their suits held, but Sterling felt sweat trickle down his spine. One detection, one alarm, and the entire hive would turn hostile. They moved deeper into the structure, following the neural pathways that Dr. Volkov had mapped. The further they went, the more Sterling understood why the Zephyrians had been overwhelmed. The hive wasn't just a ship or a station, it was a single massive organism, learning and adapting with every encounter. "Central chamber ahead," Sophia announced. "Neural density readings are off the scale." The chamber they entered was vast, its walls lined with pulsing organic computers that merged biology and technology in ways that defied comprehension. At its center floated a structure that looked like a brain the size of a small house, tendrils of light and data streaming from its surface. "That's our target," Dr. Volkov confirmed. "The main neural cluster. All swarm activities in this sector are coordinated through this hub." Rodriguez began setting up their weapon, a device that combined human and Zephyrian technology. It would release a quantum virus designed to corrupt the swarm's neural network, turning their adaptive nature against them. Multiple contacts. Olivia's warning came just as the first wave of Defender drones burst into the chamber. The team's stealth was compromised, now it was time for the other thing humans did well, violence. Sterling's plasma rifle came up smoothly as he dropped 2 drones with precision shots. Around him, his team moved with practiced efficiency, their weapons cutting through the mechanical defenders. This was what set humans apart, the ability to switch from stealth to combat in an instant, to adapt faster than their enemies. "Devices armed," Rodriguez called out. 10 seconds to activation. The chamber's walls began to pulse red as more defenders converged on their position. Sterling could feel the hive's awareness focusing on them, its vast intelligence finally recognizing the threat in its midst. "Fall back to extraction point," Sterling ordered as the device began its work. The quantum virus spread through the neural network like wildfire, corrupting data pathways and scrambling command protocols. Their retreat was a fighting withdrawal, human combat instincts honed to perfection. When they finally reached their ship and phased back through the hive's outer wall, the structure behind them was already beginning to convulse. "Phantom lead to command," Sterling transmitted as their ship accelerated away from the dying hive. "Target neutralized. The swarm just lost its command and control capability in this sector." As they watched, the massive hive structure began to break apart, its coordinated functions dissolving into chaos. Without its central intelligence, the entire network began to collapse. The counterstrike had succeeded, but Sterling knew this was just the beginning. There would be more hives, more battles. But humanity had proven something important today: even the most advanced biological weapon could be defeated by human determination and ingenuity. As their ship rendezvoused with the waiting fleet, Sterling looked at his team with pride. They were Deathworlders, yes, but they were Deathworlders who fought to protect life. And that made all the difference. Dawn of Unity. 6 months after the successful destruction of the primary hive cluster, the Great Hall of the Zephyrian High Council hosted an unprecedented gathering. The crystalline chamber, traditionally reserved for Zephyrian leaders only, now contained representatives from both civilizations. Admiral Hannah Bishop stood beside High Consul Ven, watching as human and Zephyrian engineers worked together to integrate their technologies. The remaining swarm forces, cut off from their central intelligence, had been systematically eliminated by the combined fleet. "Your people continue to surprise us," Ven said, his scales shimmering with admiration. "We spent generations fearing your warrior nature, never understanding that it was paired with such strong protective instincts." Bishop smiled. "That's the irony of evolution on a death world, Consul. When everything in your environment is trying to kill you, you learn to protect what matters. The strong defend the weak. It's encoded in our DNA." In the lower levels of the Council building, Commander Sterling's strike team was training a joint special operations group. The sight of humans teaching Zephyrians combat techniques while learning about advanced quantum physics from their alien counterparts would have been unthinkable a year ago. "The latest survey results are in," Captain Park reported, approaching with a data pad. "The swarm's presence in this sector has been reduced by 97%. The remaining 3% are isolated units, no longer capable of coordinated action. But the victory had come with costs. Several human ships had been lost in the campaign, and 3 Zephyrian colonies had been destroyed before help could arrive." The memorial wall in the council chamber bore the names of fallen warriors from both species. "We're detecting unusual quantum signatures from the remnants of the destroyed hives," Dr. Volkov announced during the daily briefing. "The Zephyrian scientists believe the swarm was part of a larger network, possibly spanning multiple galaxies." "Then we'll be ready," Bishop declared. "The defense platforms we're building will combine Zephyrian shield technology with human weapons systems. No hostile force will catch either of our civilizations unprepared again." The changes weren't just military. Cultural exchange programs had begun, with human artists learning to work with crystal matrices while Zephyrian scholars studied Earth's diverse ecosystems. The first human embassy on Crystal Lease was under construction, its design a fusion of Earth's robust architecture and Zephyrian crystalline aesthetics. "The Security Council has approved the Permanent Alliance Treaty," Commander Sterling reported, fresh from a quantum communication with Earth. "We're officially partners in the defense of this sector." The announcement brought approving murmurs from both humans and Zephyrians in the chamber. The treaty wasn't just about military cooperation, it included provisions for scientific research, cultural exchange, and joint colonization efforts. High Consul Ven addressed the gathered representatives. "When we sent that desperate message to Earth, we hoped for allies. Instead, we found something more precious, friends who understand that strength isn't just about the ability to fight, but the wisdom to know what's worth fighting for." Bishop nodded in agreement. "Our differences made us stronger together. Your scientific advancement, our combat experience. Your artistic vision, our adaptability. Apart, we were vulnerable. Together, we're unbeatable." As the gathering dispersed, Bishop walked to the observation deck. Below, the crystal cities of Crystal East sparkled in the binary sunlight, their surfaces now dotted with the more angular shapes of human architecture. Defense platforms orbited above, their presence a reminder that peace sometimes needed protection. A group of human and Zephyrian children passed by, part of the first joint education program. They moved together easily, the human children careful of their more delicate companions, the Zephyrian youngsters fascinated by their human friend's strength and energy. "That's our real victory," Sterling said, joining Bishop at the window. "Not just surviving the swarm, but building something new together." Bishop smiled. The galaxy had feared humanity's warrior nature, never understanding that true warriors knew the value of peace. The swarm had intended to destroy 2 civilizations. Instead, it had forged them into something stronger than either could have been alone. As the binary sun set, casting rainbow refractions through the crystal spires, Bishop reflected on how far they'd come. Humanity had proven itself not just as warriors, but as protectors. The Zephyrians had overcome their fears to embrace new allies. Together, they had created something unprecedented in the galaxy, a partnership that balanced strength with wisdom, power with responsibility. The dawn of unity had arrived, and its light promised a future brighter than either civilization could have imagined alone.